So when we are looking at the body, you need to understand tissue dynamics and how they relate to stress, because this is something else that we don't do. And I'll give you a practical example in a second. So number one, the range of motion that you take your body through, the higher or larger ranges of motion you take your body through is more stress to the system because it's more stress to the tissue. It isn't wrong. It isn't bad. It's just that's the way it is. Lower range of motion, less stress. Higher range of motion, more stress. That's it. Speed, the slower you go, less stress. The faster you go, more stress. That's all it is. Force, how much load you use or how much time is under tension. The lower, the less stress. The higher amount, the more stress. Contractions, you have concentric, you have isometric, you have eccentric. Concentric and isometric, depending on your load and your speed and your range of motion, can have potentially less stress. Eccentric, depending on the force, the speed, and the range of motion, has more stress. So uh, the most degrading way to, or the easiest way to tear down and break down tissue is to do a fast, a loaded, high speed, eccentric contraction. That's just science. It's not bad. It's just letting you, we need to understand how the tissues work and what creates more stress. Because if I have somebody who's extremely stressed, when they come into me, they haven't recovered very well. Why would I take them through all the high stuff? Why would I go through large ranges of motion, faster speeds, and higher forces, and do elongated or eccentric contractions under higher load? That doesn't make sense. But we think that's what we're supposed to do. So there's people who I totally get the SAID principle. You get a specific adaptation imposed demand. I get that. But when the body is not at its optimal state, you can't train for that particular function. You can't take athletes. You don't have to take an athlete through high speed, heavy load all the time, because all you'll do is break them down, and then you'll miss out on the other adaptations that they're going to need to have anyway. So this is why periodization can work, but you have to have personalized periodization. You need to know when a person is in a certain level of readiness in order to find out which type of training they should do. I'll give an example. People warm up. They do warm-ups, but they'll use dynamic motion. I'll give you two scenarios. They'll use dynamic motion, they'll use large range of motion, that they're trying to force their body into a range of motion. So if I'm forcing my body to go into a range of motion that it's not necessarily prepared to do, is that going to create more stress or less stress? And you should all be saying it's going to create more stress. Exactly. So why would I do that with a person who's not in optimal functional state right now? There's no reason to, because the body is only going to fight me because it doesn't want to do that. We tell the body what to do more than we ask the body what it should be doing and what it wants to do. Are there times we have to go outside? Yes. But then that means that you have to understand the recovery process from that. So we don't need to go through fast, large range of motion warm-ups because we're going to go sprinting. We need to prepare the system and ramp it up. And this is where we lose sight of the whole contraction continuum. We lose sight of how muscle fibers and muscle motor units work. We lose sight of everything because we see stuff and we think that's what we're supposed to do. We see people who take 50-pound kettlebells or a 20-kilo kettlebell and they'll set it on their knee and they're trying to create dorsiflexion with their, you're forcing the body to do something that it's not capable of doing. How do you think it will respond to you? It's going to fight you. That's what it does. And then you can override the system, but have you actually helped the system or have you hurt the system, and how do you know? Because we don't test muscle function, we just look for range of motion. Those are two totally different things. Two totally different things. Okay, so understand tissue dynamics. There's a lower end and there's a moderate end, and we can go in between. So in our course, we talk about mobility drills. There are mobility drills that we call fascial mobilizers. And the fascial mobilizers are a slow rhythmical motion. So when someone is stressed, or if you're trying to prepare someone to get to a higher, faster range of motion, You can use these to get the tissue to move and create fluidity and still not threaten the system, so it's better prepared to do something. And it works phenomenal. And that's why we have a specific sequence that we've laid out at LACO. It's not that you have to use every form of the sequence, but there's a specific sequence that we walk you through that's based upon tissue dynamics, that's based upon understanding stress, and based upon research.